Nihilism. What if life has no meaning? Not your life, not my life, all of existence. That's the starting point of nihilism, the belief that the universe, at its core, has no inherent purpose, value, or ultimate goal. It's not about depression, or sadness, or even rebellion. It's about a question that sits underneath everything we do. Does any of this truly matter? The idea has been around for centuries, but it became especially prominent in the 19th century, with philosophers like Friedrich Nietzsche asking what happens when humanity can no longer rely on religion or traditional values to give life meaning. If the universe wasn't designed with us in mind, if there's no cosmic plan, then meaning isn't something we find, it's something we invent. To a nihilist, this isn't shocking. It's just reality stripped of the comforting story we like to tell ourselves. For many, nihilism feels heavy. If nothing has inherent value, why try? Why create? Why love? But nihilism doesn't necessarily mean despair. Some see it as freedom. If the universe has no assigned meaning, then we're free to create our own. There's no script to follow, no cosmic expectations to meet. Still, the shift from a world of built-in purpose to a world of self-made meaning can feel like stepping off solid ground into open air. You can see hints of nihilistic thought in everyday life. That moment when you've been chasing a goal for years, finally achieve it, and then feel strangely empty. The quiet thought after an argument, in the grand scheme of things, does this even matter? Or when you realize that every monument, every empire, every name in history will eventually fade, and maybe even the planet itself will one day be gone. These aren't just random thoughts, they're little cracks in the illusion that life's meaning is set in stone. Nihilism can be dangerous if it turns into apathy. If nothing matters becomes a reason to stop caring entirely, then it can spiral into a self-fulfilling void. But there's another side to it, one Nietzsche himself pointed toward. Once we accept the absence of cosmic meaning, we can stop chasing it outside ourselves and start building it within. Love, art, learning, kindness. They don't need the universe's permission to matter. They can matter because we decide they do. Not everyone accepts nihilism's premise. Some argue that meaning does exist. We just don't always recognize it. Others believe that purpose isn't written into the universe, but emerges naturally from connection, morality, or consciousness itself. Even within nihilism, there are debates. Some forms are absolute, rejecting all meaning. Others, like existentialism, start from the same emptiness, but see it as a blank canvas instead of a void. The reason nihilism lingers in philosophy, and in the back of our minds, is that it's not something you can easily disprove. We can measure particles, explore galaxies, and build the most powerful tools in history, and still never find a cosmic instruction manual that says, here's why you're here. And maybe that's because there isn't one. Nihilism isn't about wanting life to be meaningless. It's about asking what's left if it is. If there's no grand design, then everything we care about, our work, our relationships, our dreams, matters simply because we choose it to. In that way, nihilism can feel like a door closing, or like one opening into a room with no walls. What you do in that room is entirely up to you. The problem of evil. If there's a God, all-powerful, all-knowing, perfectly good, why is there so much suffering in the world? Why do children die in disasters? Why do diseases tear apart lives? Why do cruelty and injustice seem built into the structure of existence itself? This question has a name: the problem of evil. And it's one of the oldest, hardest challenges in philosophy and theology. It starts with three simple ideas. God is all-powerful, so he could stop evil. God is all-knowing, so he knows evil is happening. God is perfectly good, so he should want to stop evil. But evil exists, which means something in that list doesn't add up. If God can't stop evil, maybe he's not all-powerful. If he doesn't know about it, maybe he's not all-knowing. If he knows and can stop it but chooses not to, maybe he's not perfectly good. This isn't a modern problem. Ancient Greek philosopher Epicurus raised it thousands of years ago, and every major religion has wrestled with it in some form. For believers, the challenge is clear. How do you explain suffering without giving up the idea of a perfect God? For non-believers, the problem becomes an argument against God's existence entirely. One of the most popular answers is that God gave humans free will. Without the ability to choose evil, we wouldn't truly be free. In this view, moral evil, war, cruelty, injustice, isn't God's doing. It's ours. But free will doesn't explain everything. It doesn't explain natural disasters, diseases, or accidents. The kinds of suffering no human chooses. Another idea is that suffering exists to help us grow. Pain builds resilience. Hardship teaches compassion. Without challenges, we'd be shallow and untested. This turns the world into a kind of moral training ground. But it raises another question. Do the most extreme forms of suffering really teach anything? Or do they simply destroy? Some argue that we can't see the full picture. What looks like meaningless suffering might serve a greater purpose we can't understand from our limited perspective. This is comforting for some, but frustrating for others. It asks us to accept horrors without explanation, trusting that somewhere, somehow, they make sense. The problem of evil isn't just about abstract logic. It's personal. When someone loses a loved one or watches a tragedy unfold, these philosophical answers often feel hollow. They may solve the puzzle on paper, but they don't take away the raw experience of loss. That's why the problem remains so powerful. It's not just an intellectual challenge. It's an emotional one. If none of the explanations work, we're left with darker conclusions. Maybe God exists, but isn't all-powerful. A cosmic being doing his best in a chaotic universe. Maybe God is all-powerful, but not entirely good. A possibility that shakes the foundation of most religious belief. Or maybe there is no God at all, and suffering is simply a feature of an indifferent universe. Each possibility changes the way we see life, morality, and our place in the cosmos. Even without God in the equation, the problem of evil lingers. If the universe has no moral overseer, then evil isn't something that shouldn't exist. It's just something that does. But that leaves us with the responsibility, maybe the burden, of deciding for ourselves how to respond to it. Without a higher authority to appeal to, stopping suffering becomes entirely our job, and that can feel both empowering and terrifying. The problem of evil has no final answer that satisfies everyone. Every solution either changes the definition of God, changes the definition of good, or asks us to accept that some things simply can't be explained. Maybe the value of the question isn't in solving it, but in how it forces us to confront our beliefs. It makes us ask, what do we expect from the universe? What do we believe about justice and fairness? And how do we live, knowing that suffering is inescapable? The problem of evil isn't just a challenge for religion. It's a mirror for humanity's deepest hopes and fears. It forces us to face a reality where pain and beauty coexist, where joy can be shattered in a moment, and where the question, why, may never have an answer. Whether you see that as proof against God, a test of faith, or simply a truth of existence, one thing remains certain: the problem isn't going away. Because as long as we feel suffering, we'll keep asking why it's here, and what, if anything, can be done about it. Fatalism. If the future is already fixed, do your choices actually matter? That's the unsettling question behind fatalism. The belief that no matter what you do, the outcome of your life, and even the fate of the entire universe, is already determined. It's not about probabilities or likelihoods. It's about inevitability. If something is meant to happen, it will happen. And if it's not, no amount of effort can change it. Fatalism isn't the same as determinism, though the two are often confused. Determinism says everything has a cause, that every event follows from the laws of physics and the state of the universe before it. Fatalism takes it further. The end result is fixed, no matter the path you take to get there. It's like reading a book when you already know the ending. You can flip pages forward or backward. You can linger over certain chapters, but the last page will always be the same. The idea of fate appears in some of humanity's oldest stories. Ancient Greek tragedies often hinged on prophecies that characters tried to avoid, and in doing so, ended up fulfilling. Take the story of Oedipus. Told he would one day kill his father and marry his mother, he fled his home to prevent it. But every decision he made brought him closer to the prophecy's fulfillment. The lesson? Fate is a net you can't swim out of. We may not talk about oracles and prophecies anymore, but the core idea survives. A patient hears a terminal diagnosis and wonders if fighting it changes anything. A soldier goes into battle believing that if it's his day to die, nothing can stop it. A person in love convinces themselves that if two people are meant to be, they'll find each other, no matter what. These are everyday echoes of fatalism, where the belief in inevitability shapes how people live. Fatalism can be strangely comforting. If the future is already set, you don't have to carry the burden of control. If something goes wrong, it was meant to be. If something goes right, it was always going to happen. But it can also be paralyzing. If nothing you do can change the end result, why try? Why make plans? Why fight for anything at all? This is the fatalist's trap, a belief that can either relieve you of anxiety or rob you of purpose. In physics, there's an echo of fatalism in the idea of a block universe, a view of time where past, present, and future all exist at once, like frames of a film reel. From this perspective, every moment is already there, even if we haven't reached it yet. But whether that means we can't change anything, or whether change is just another part of the fixed film, is still up for debate. Philosophers who push back against fatalism often point out that even if an outcome is inevitable, the way you get there still matters. Maybe you can't change the fact that you'll eventually die, but you can change the kind of life you live before then. The journey can have value, even if the destination is the same for everyone. And there's another subtle point. Believing in fatalism can itself change the way you act, which can change outcomes. If you think you're doomed to fail, you might stop trying, which could become the very reason you fail. In that sense, fatalism can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Fatalism endures because it taps into two opposing human instincts: the desire for control and the longing to let go of it. When life feels chaotic, fate offers a story where everything, even the pain, has a place. But when life feels suffocating, that same story can feel like a prison. Whether you see fatalism as wisdom or as a trap depends on what you do with it. If you treat it as an excuse to drift, it can make your life smaller. But if you see it as a reminder to focus on what you can shape, your actions, your values, the way you respond to events, it can sharpen your purpose instead of dulling it. In the end, maybe the truth isn't whether fate is real, but how you live with the possibility that it might be. Because if the future is set, the only choice you have left is how to meet it. The simulation. Hypothesis. What if everything you see, hear, and feel right now is fake? Not fake as in imaginary, but fake as in artificial. A complex simulation running on some unimaginably advanced computer with you as one of its characters. This is the simulation hypothesis, the idea that reality itself could be a program. The modern version of the theory comes from philosopher Nick Bostrom. He suggests that if technology keeps advancing, one day civilizations might have the power to run incredibly realistic simulations of entire worlds, complete with simulated people who believe they're real. And if that's possible, he argues, there's a good chance it's already happened, and we're inside one of them. Why? Because if future civilizations can make billions of these simulated worlds, then statistically, there would be far more simulated realities than real ones. Which means the odds of us being in the one real reality are actually pretty small. Think about video games. 40 years ago, they were just pixels on a screen. Now we have virtual worlds so detailed you can get lost in them, with weather, physics, and artificial intelligence that reacts to you. If that progress continues, imagine a game so realistic that the characters inside it believe they're alive. From their perspective, their world would be just as real as ours feels to us. If we can imagine building something like that, who's to say it hasn't already been done? By someone else, somewhere else, long before we existed? Some point to the strange, mathematical nature of the universe as a hint. Physics, at its deepest level, is made up of fixed laws and constants. Almost like the rules of a game, matter is quantized into discrete packets, like pixels. Even space and time may have a smallest possible unit, like a grid. To some, that sounds less like a physical reality, and more like code. Others point to quantum physics, where particles seem to act differently when observed. Could that be a kind of rendering process, like a video game only loading the part of the world you're looking at? Of course, there's no solid evidence we're in a simulation. The laws of physics could simply be the way they are, without needing a programmer. And quantum strangeness might be just that. Strange physics, not proof of computer code. Some also argue that even if future civilizations could run perfect simulations, they might choose not to, either because it's unethical or because it's a colossal waste of resources. And if we are in a simulation, moving it might be impossible, unless the creators want us to know. The real impact of the simulation hypothesis isn't whether it's true, it's what it does to our sense of meaning. If we're simulated, does anything matter? Does love or art or morality mean less if they're just patterns of data? Some say yes, that simulated reality is fake reality. Others argue that if the experience feels real, then it is real, at least to us. After all, your feelings, memories, and thoughts are already patterns in your brain. Whether they're biological or digital might not change how they feel. This idea isn't entirely new. Plato's allegory of the cave described people who had only ever seen shadows on a wall, mistaking them for reality. In the 17th century, René Descartes wondered if an evil demon was feeding him false perceptions. The simulation hypothesis is a modern version of the same doubt, but instead of demons, we have programmers. Instead of shadows, we have code. If the simulation hypothesis is true, then our entire universe might be a kind of theater, a place built for reasons we can't fully understand. But maybe that's no different from how life feels already. We're born into a stage we didn't design, with rules we didn't choose, trying to make sense of a story we're still inside of. Whether it's atoms or algorithms, maybe the real question isn't what reality is made of, but what we choose to do inside it. Eternal oblivion. What happens after you die? Most religions promise some kind of continuation. Heaven, reincarnation, spiritual transformation. Even in secular culture, people talk about watching over loved ones, or becoming one with the universe. But there's another possibility. One that's simpler, colder, and far more unsettling. It's the idea that when you die, that's it. Your consciousness stops. You experience nothing forever. This is eternal oblivion, the belief that death is the absolute end of all awareness. At its heart, eternal oblivion is a straightforward claim. Your mind is tied to your body. Your thoughts, memories, and sense of self all come from physical processes in the brain. When the brain stops working, the self disappears. And if there's no afterlife, no spirit, no hidden dimension where you go, then what's left is nothing. Not darkness, not a blank room, just nothing. No awareness to even notice the nothing. You've never experienced nothing. Even in deep sleep, you eventually wake up. When you're unconscious, time still passes, at least from the outside. Trying to picture eternal oblivion is like trying to see beyond the edge of sight. The mind resists, because the thing you're trying to imagine is the absence of mind itself. For some, the idea is terrifying. If life is all there is, then death becomes a wall you can't climb, a horizon you'll never cross. All the things you are, your loves, your fears, your identity, vanish. For others, it's oddly comforting. There's no judgment waiting for you, no eternal punishment, no endless cycle to escape. You simply stop. The struggles of life end with life itself. Eternal oblivion also fits neatly with what science tells us about the universe. Stars burn out. Galaxies drift apart. Even the universe itself may one day reach a heat death, where all energy is spread so thin that nothing can happen anymore. From that perspective, expecting human consciousness to continue forever might be more surprising than expecting it to end. Religious traditions reject the idea outright, offering visions of life beyond death. Even some scientists speculate that consciousness might be more than just the brain, perhaps tied to quantum processes or existing as a fundamental property of the universe. There's also the argument from experience. People who've had near-death experiences often report vivid sensations, tunnels of light, reunions with loved ones. Skeptics say these are brain events, not glimpses of another world. Believers see them as proof that something continues. But no matter how compelling the stories are, they don't resolve the question. The challenge of eternal oblivion isn't just about death. It's about how it changes life. If there's no afterlife, then meaning has to be found here and now. There's no cosmic scorekeeper, no second chance. Every choice matters because it's the only version you'll ever get. Some find this motivating, a reason to live fully, love deeply, and leave something behind. Others find it crushing, knowing that eventually, even the memory of their life will disappear. Imagine your life as a movie. If you know the film ends, no sequel, no credits scene, does that make the story less valuable? Or does it make every scene more precious because you know it's finite? Eternal oblivion forces that question on all of us. If the story ends completely, what do you want to make of the time before it does? Eternal oblivion might be the most extreme form of humility. It strips away the idea that we're permanent or central or guaranteed a place beyond this one fragile existence. It can be frightening, but it can also be clarifying. Because if this is all we have, then this is where meaning has to live. Whether you see that as tragedy or liberation depends on what you choose to do before the credits roll. The absurd. Camus. Humans want life to make sense. We look for patterns, signs, and meanings. We write religions, philosophies, and self-help books, all to answer the same quiet question: why are we here? But what if the universe doesn't have an answer? That's the starting point of the absurd, a concept made famous by French-Algerian philosopher Albert Camus. It's the collision between our need for meaning and a universe that seems silent. The absurd isn't saying life is bad, or pointless, or meaningless in some absolute sense. It's saying there's a mismatch. On one side, you have us, creatures desperate for clarity. On the other side, you have the indifferent chaos of reality. Camus compared it to asking the universe a question and getting nothing back. Not a yes, not a no, just nothing. Humans don't just want to survive, we want to understand. We want to believe our struggles matter, that our stories are part of something bigger. But the more we look at the universe, the endless void of space, the randomness of history, the fragility of life, the less certain we are that there's a grand plan. This isn't the tragedy of finding out there's no meaning. It's the tension of wanting meaning anyway, and realizing the universe won't hand it to you. For Camus, the absurd is inevitable. You can't erase it by believing in a grand design you can't prove. You can't escape it by pretending you don't care. So the question becomes, how should we live, knowing life may have no higher meaning? Camus' answer was radical. You live with the absurd. You don't run from it, and you don't try to solve it. You accept that the search for meaning may never end, and you keep searching anyway. Camus used an ancient Greek myth to explain his point. Sisyphus was a man condemned by the gods to roll a boulder up a hill, only to have it roll back down every time he reached the top. Forever. It's the perfect symbol for the human condition. Endless effort. No final victory. The absurd isn't in the rock or the hill. It's in the fact that Sisyphus keeps going, knowing the task will never be finished. And yet, Camus ends with a surprising statement. One must imagine Sisyphus happy, because meaning doesn't have to come from the end goal. It can come from the act itself, from living, loving, creating, even in the face of uncertainty. You don't have to push a boulder to feel the absurd. It's in the student who studies for years, graduates, and then wonders what's next. It's in the worker who spends decades building a career only to retire and feel lost. It's in the moments when you reach a lifelong dream and realize life just keeps going. The absurd is that gap between the ending you imagine and the life you actually have. Camus warned about two common ways we try to escape the absurd: religious or philosophical leaps, deciding there must be a higher purpose and accepting it without proof; despair, deciding nothing matters and giving up on trying at all. Both, for Camus, are ways of avoiding the truth, that we may never get a satisfying answer. Living with the absurd means embracing life fully, even if it's not part of a grand story. It means creating meaning through your actions, your relationships, your art, your choices, not because they're eternal, but because they're yours. It's a defiance of sorts. The universe may not care, but you do. The absurd isn't a reason to give up. It's a reason to live deliberately. Camus saw it not as a curse, but as an opportunity. A chance to stop waiting for the universe to hand you a reason and to start building one yourself. In the end, maybe we're all Sisyphus. The boulder is our life. The hill is time, and the point isn't whether the rock stays at the top, but that we keep pushing it and find a way to smile while we do. Moral relativism. What if good and evil aren't universal truths, but just human inventions? That's the question at the heart of moral relativism, the idea that morality isn't absolute. Instead, it depends on culture, time, and perspective. What one society calls right, another might call wrong, and history is full of examples where those definitions have flipped. Moral relativism challenges the belief that there's one unchanging moral code for all humans, everywhere. Instead, it says morality is shaped by where and when you happen to live. In other words, change the context, and the morality changes with it. Take something as simple as clothing. In some societies, covering your hair is a sign of respect. In others, it's unnecessary. In still others, showing too much skin is seen as offensive, while in another time or place, it's normal. Or think about laws. Alcohol is banned in some countries, but celebrated in others. Marriage customs, gender roles, even the idea of what counts as justice. All of these shift across cultures and eras. What feels morally obvious to you today might have been unthinkable to your great-grandparents, and could be rejected by people living on the other side of the world right now. If morality is relative, then there's no cosmic scoreboard, no universal set of rules written into the fabric of the universe. That can be freeing, but it's also unsettling. If there's no absolute right, how do we decide what to do? If there's no absolute wrong, how do we judge others? And if everything depends on perspective, can anything be truly condemned? Moral relativism often uses the idea of the cultural lens. Imagine you're wearing glasses tinted by your upbringing, your religion, your country's history. Those lenses shape how you see morality. Someone in another culture wears a different pair, and their moral world looks different to them. Neither person is wrong from their own point of view, but both can't be right in any universal sense. Critics of moral relativism argue that it leads to dangerous territory. If morality is completely relative, then practices like slavery, genocide, or oppression could be defended as just part of a culture. Without universal moral standards, how can we say those things are wrong for everyone in all cases? Some philosophers suggest there are certain moral truths that transcend culture, like prohibitions against unnecessary killing or the value of fairness. These would form a kind of moral baseline shared by all humans, even if the details vary. For individuals, moral relativism forces a difficult question. How much of your morality is truly yours, and how much was handed to you by your culture? Would you hold the same beliefs if you'd been born in another century, in another country, in another religion? And if not, what does that say about the certainty you feel when you say something is right or wrong? Most people live somewhere between absolute morality and complete relativism. We might believe certain values are universal, like compassion, while accepting that other moral rules are more flexible. But that gray zone can be slippery. It forces us to constantly examine why we believe what we believe, and to stay open to the idea that our moral instincts might not be the final word. Moral relativism doesn't have to mean that anything goes. It can mean recognizing that our sense of right and wrong is shaped by forces bigger than us, and that understanding those forces can make us more thoughtful, less judgmental, and more aware of our own biases. It's uncomfortable to think that morality might be a moving target, but it might also be the first step toward building a moral system that's not just inherited, but chosen. Determinism. You make choices every day. What to eat, where to go, who to talk to. But what if those choices were never truly yours? That's the question at the heart of determinism. The idea that every event, every thought, and every decision is the inevitable result of what came before it. In this view, free will isn't an open field. It's a track you've been running on since the moment you were born. Determinism says that everything in the universe follows the laws of cause and effect. If you know the exact state of the universe at one moment, every particle's position, every law of physics, you could, in theory, predict the entire future. Your decision to have coffee this morning? It was determined by a chain of events stretching back billions of years, from the formation of the Earth, to the way your parents met, to the neurons firing in your brain at the moment you reached for the cup. Think of it like an infinite row of dominoes. You are one domino in the line. You might feel like you can fall in any direction, but the truth is, the way you fall is shaped entirely by the domino that hit you, and the one that hit that one, and so on, all the way back to the first. In determinism, there is no first choice. There is only the chain. Determinism has roots in classical physics. Isaac Newton's laws made the universe seem like a giant clock, mechanical, predictable, and perfectly lawful. In that world, free will doesn't fit. If every atom is following exact rules, then your brain, made of atoms, is also following them. Even modern neuroscience finds hints of this. Some experiments show that the brain starts preparing for a decision milliseconds before you're aware of making it. That means the choice was set in motion before you consciously decided. For some, determinism is liberating. If everything is determined, you can stop blaming yourself for past mistakes. They were inevitable. You can stop obsessing over what ifs, because there were never any real alternatives. For others, it's deeply unsettling. If your path is fixed, are you really you? Can you be held responsible for anything? And if we're just playing out a script, is life still meaningful? Not everyone accepts hard determinism. Some point to quantum physics, where particles behave unpredictably at tiny scales. This randomness could mean the universe isn't fully determined, but randomness isn't the same as free will. If your choices are the product of chance, that's not freedom, it's just unpredictability. Others argue for compatibilism, the idea that free will can exist within a deterministic universe. In this view, you're free as long as you're acting according to your own desires and reasoning, even if those desires and reasoning are themselves determined by prior causes. Think about your favorite book or movie. The ending is already set, but you still enjoy the story. You still feel the characters' struggles, even though you know they couldn't have done anything differently. Some people see life the same way. Even if the outcome is determined, the experience still matters. Determinism endures because it's hard to escape the logic of cause and effect. Every decision you've ever made was influenced by something: your biology, your upbringing, the situation you were in at the time. And if every influence has a cause, then where exactly would true freedom come in? Determinism doesn't have to erase meaning. It can be a reminder that you are part of an unbroken chain stretching back to the birth of the universe. Maybe you can't step off the track, but you can still run with purpose. You can still shape your environment, inspire others, and leave your mark, even if those actions were always going to happen. In the end, determinism challenges the idea that you're the author of your story, but it also suggests something else: that your story is woven into the fabric of everything. And maybe that connection to every cause and effect in history is its own kind of freedom. Solipsism. What if nothing and no one exists outside your own mind? No friends, no strangers, no world, no universe. Just you. And everything else as a projection, like a dream you can't wake up from. This is solipsism, the philosophical idea that only your own mind is certain to exist. Everything else could be an illusion. At its simplest, solipsism asks, how do you know anything is real except your own thoughts? You can't directly experience someone else's mind. You can't step outside your own consciousness to check if the world is really there. Every bit of information you have about reality, from the sound of a voice to the sight of a sunset, comes to you through your senses, and your senses can be fooled. If your mind is the only thing you can be sure of, then maybe it's the only thing that exists. You've probably had a dream so vivid it felt real. In the dream, you walk, talk, feel, think, all within a world that seems solid. Then you wake up, and it dissolves. Solipsism asks, what if you never wake up? What if reality is just another dream, generated entirely by your mind? If solipsism is true, then everyone you've ever known, your family, your friends, even people you've loved, are just parts of your imagination. The places you've visited, the history you've learned, the stars in the night sky, all fabrications. That means every conversation you've ever had was you talking to yourself. Every compliment, every argument, every goodbye, all staged in the theater of your own mind. For some, this thought is deeply isolating. If no one else is real, then love, friendship, and community are illusions. You are truly alone. For others, it's strangely empowering. If reality is your creation, then you are, in a sense, the god of your own universe. Everything that happens is happening within you. Most philosophers reject strict solipsism, not because they can prove it's false, but because it's practically useless. If you act as if nothing is real but you still have to live within the rules of the illusion. Hunger still feels real, pain still hurts, gravity still pulls you down, and even if other minds are illusions, they behave in ways you can't fully control, which suggests they might not be just parts of you. Solipsism overlaps with the idea of living in a simulation, but it's even more extreme. In a simulation, there's still an external reality, the computers and programmers running it. In solipsism, there's only you, no outside world at all. It's the ultimate brain in a vat scenario, where all your experiences are just signals fed to your mind, with nothing beyond them. Even if you don't believe in solipsism, it's a reminder of how limited our knowledge is. You can't prove that your memories are accurate, that your senses always tell the truth, or that the world wasn't created 5 minutes ago with the appearance of age. That uncertainty can be unsettling, but it can also make you more humble, less quick to assume your perspective is the only one that matters. Since solipsism can't be disproven, the real question becomes, what do you do with it? Camus faced a similar problem with the absurd. His answer was to live fully anyway, to act as if the world is real, because the alternative makes life meaningless. You could spend your life doubting everyone and everything, or you could decide that even if reality is an illusion, it's the only one you've got, so you might as well live in it. Solipsism isn't just a philosophical puzzle, it's a challenge to the foundation of what we think we know. It forces us to face the possibility that reality might be nothing more than a story we're telling ourselves. Whether that's terrifying or liberating depends on how you feel about being the sole character in the only play that's ever existed. A play written, directed, and performed entirely in your own mind. The heat death of the universe. Everything you know, every planet, every star, every galaxy, has an expiration date. Not just for life or for Earth, but for the universe itself. One of the most haunting possibilities for how it all ends is called the heat. Death of the universe. A future where everything fades, not in fire, but in cold, silent emptiness. The heat death is based on the second law of thermodynamics. In any closed system, energy spreads out over time. It becomes less and less useful for doing work. The universe, as far as we can tell, is a closed system, which means its energy is constantly evening out, moving toward a state called maximum entropy. When that happens, there will be no temperature differences, no chemical reactions, no light, no life. Just a uniform, dead calm. This isn't something you'll see in your lifetime, or in the lifetime of your great-great-grandchildren, or in the lifetime of the entire human race. We're talking about trillions of years in the future. First, stars will burn through their fuel and die. Galaxies will drift apart as space itself expands. Even black holes, the most durable objects we know, will eventually evaporate through a slow process called Hawking radiation. In the final stage, the universe will be a thin, cold mist of particles, spread so far apart they barely interact. Nothing will ever happen again. The name sounds like everything gets hotter until it burns away, but it's the opposite. Heat death means there's no usable heat left, no way to transfer energy from one place to another. It's like a car engine with gas spread evenly over the road instead of in the tank. The energy is still there, but it's useless. For some, this is the ultimate cosmic tragedy. Every structure, every achievement, every moment of beauty, gone. The universe will end not with a bang, but with a whisper. For others, it's strangely peaceful. No catastrophe, no violence, just a slow fading into stillness. But either way, it's a reminder that everything we know is temporary, on the largest possible scale. Not all scientists agree that heat death is inevitable. Some theories suggest the universe might eventually stop expanding and collapse back in on itself. A big crunch. Others imagine endless cycles of expansion and contraction, with new universes born after each collapse. Still others propose that dark energy, the mysterious force driving the universe's expansion, could change over time, leading to outcomes we can't yet predict. But right now, based on current observations, heat death remains one of the leading candidates for the universe's end. It's tempting to think this is too far away to mean anything, but contemplating the heat, death, changes how you see the present. If the universe is heading toward stillness, then all the movement, color, and life we see now are temporary exceptions. Rare flashes of order in a sea that will one day be entirely random. It makes our moment in cosmic history feel both incredibly fragile and incredibly special. Some people react with existential dread. If everything ends, what's the point of anything we do now? Others take the opposite view. If everything is temporary, that makes now the only thing that matters. Our lives, our art, our connections, they exist against a backdrop where nothing else will. That rarity gives them value. The heat. Death of the universe is the farthest horizon we can imagine, a horizon where even time itself seems pointless. It's a reminder that permanence may be an illusion, and that even the cosmos isn't exempt from endings. Whether you see that as a reason to despair, or as a reason to cherish every fleeting moment, is up to you. Because one day, in a future so distant it defies imagination, the last star will burn out, and the curtain will quietly fall on the only universe we've ever known. The last human. Imagine waking up one morning to find that everyone else is gone. No family, no strangers, no voices, no signs of life anywhere. The cities are still standing, the oceans still move, the sun still rises and sets, but you are the only human left on Earth. This is the thought experiment of the last human, a scenario that forces us to confront the meaning of life when there's no one left to share it with. At first, there might be a strange kind of freedom. No jobs, no rules, no traffic. Every building, every resource, every piece of technology is yours for the taking. You could walk through empty museums, drive any car you wanted, live in the penthouse of the tallest skyscraper. But very quickly, the silence would begin to grow heavy. There's no one to see you, no one to talk to, no one to care whether you exist or not. The last human scenario isn't really about scavenging for food or avoiding danger, though those challenges would be real. It's about purpose. Most of what we do in life, we do for or with other people. Work, conversation, art, even the small rituals of daily life. Remove everyone else, and most of those activities lose their meaning. Would you still write a book if no one would ever read it? Would you still paint if no one would ever see your work? Would you still get out of bed if no one would ever notice you didn't? Humans are social creatures. Even introverts, who need more time alone, still depend on the knowledge that others exist, that we're part of a shared reality. Without that, loneliness stops being an occasional ache and becomes the entire atmosphere you live in. Over time, your mind might begin to break down. You might start talking to objects, inventing imaginary friends, or replaying old conversations in your head just to hear a voice. And eventually, you might question whether you're really the last human, or whether you've gone mad and imagined the rest of the world into nothingness. The last human thought experiment asks a deep question. If there's no one left to remember you, does your life still matter? Most of us build meaning in connection to others, raising children, teaching students, helping communities, creating art for audiences. Without those connections, meaning has to come from somewhere else. It's a pure test of whether purpose can exist without witnesses. Some might sink into despair, waiting passively for the end. Others might turn to pure hedonism, doing whatever feels good in the moment. But some might decide to live as if the world were still full. You could preserve knowledge, record your thoughts, plant forests that no one will ever walk through, acts that won't be seen but might still feel worth doing. That choice would be less about changing the world and more about refusing to let the world change you. On a larger scale, the last human might not just be a thought experiment. It could be a reality one day. If humanity doesn't last forever, there will be someone, somewhere, who is truly the last. They may know it, or they may not. From that perspective, we're all a little like the last human already, Each of us will experience a final day when our personal world ends, whether or not the rest of the species continues. The last human forces us to strip away all the things that give life meaning through other people and ask what's left. If no one's watching, would you still create beauty? If no one will remember you, would you still try to live well? Because maybe meaning isn't just in the audience, maybe it's in the act itself, even if you're the only one who ever sees it. And if that's true, then perhaps even the last human could still live a life worth living, right up until the very last breath. The eternal return. Nietzsche. What if you had to live your life over again, exactly the same way, forever? Every joy, every heartbreak, every mistake, every moment, big or small, repeated in the exact same order for all eternity. This is the eternal return, a thought experiment from German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, and it's one of the most unsettling challenges to how we think about life. Nietzsche asks us to imagine that a demon comes to you in the middle of the night and says, "This life, as you now live it and have lived it, you will have to live once more and innumerable times more, and there will be nothing new in it. No changes, no edits, no second chances. You live it all, exactly the same, not once, not twice, but an infinite number of times." For Nietzsche, this isn't just a strange story. It's a test of your attitude toward life. If the thought of eternal return fills you with dread, maybe you're living in a way you don't truly embrace. If it excites you, if you could joyfully live every moment again, then you've reached a kind of ultimate acceptance of life. It's not about whether eternal return is literally true. It's about how you'd feel if it were. We often think of life as a one-way journey. We can regret the past, but we can't go back. We can hope the future will be different. Eternal return removes that comfort. If the future is identical to the past, there's no next time to make better choices, no escape from your mistakes, no undoing of the pain you've caused, or the pain you've felt. It forces you to face your life exactly as it is, without the fantasy of changing it. Imagine reliving your worst day, not once, but endlessly. The fight you wish you'd avoided, the opportunity you let slip, the loss you couldn't stop. Now imagine reliving your best day, the laughter, the connection, the beauty. Eternal return contains both, and it forces you to see them as inseparable parts of the same whole, your whole life. Nietzsche wasn't trying to scare people. He was pushing them toward what he called amor fati, love of fate. To love your fate means to embrace life exactly as it is, without wishing it were different. Not just the good parts, but the painful, ugly, and difficult parts too. If you could say yes to eternal return, to living it all again, you'd be saying yes to life in its fullest form. Of course, many people reject the idea entirely. Some say it's pointless. Life has meaning because it's fleeting. If it repeated forever, that meaning would be diluted. Others argue that without the possibility of change, eternal return turns life into a kind of cosmic prison. But Nietzsche would say that's exactly the point. If you see it as a prison, you've uncovered the parts of your life you haven't yet learned to accept. Even if eternal return isn't real, you can still use it as a mental tool. Ask yourself, if I had to live this exact moment again and again forever, would I be okay with that? If the answer is no, maybe that's a signal to change how you're living right now, so that even in an endless loop, you could find meaning in it. The eternal return is less about the afterlife and more about this life. It's a challenge to live so fully, so honestly, and so completely that you could welcome the idea of reliving it forever, not because it's perfect, but because it's yours. Whether or not the demon ever visits you in the night, the question remains, If you had to do it all again, exactly the same, would you be able to say yes?